Welcome to Real Time Recorded. That's Dave Michaels. I'm with Zias Karavala. Zias, there hasn't been a lot of news this week. It's been, other than your cycling, not a lot to report.
Yeah, well, we came off the 4th, and I think companies are sort of in the midst of that summer swoon. So I suspect as we get
Still
closer
shooting
to
fireworks.
Yeah.
Now there was some news. We had what was it? 8x8 announced. No code, low code.
Low code, no code.
We'll cover that next week probably.
Okay.
Ring Central had a new fax feature. We don't talk about fax nearly enough on this podcast, so we'll talk about that next week. But this week we're going to do something non-newsy. We're about halfway through the year, maybe a little later, but just about halfway through the year, week 28. And so we thought we would talk about the trends we're seeing for the year. We've got 5 trends identified, and probably be the same 5 trends at the end of the year recap. You never know, but this industry doesn't make, trends are bigger things. But let's go ahead and start off, Zias. I think the first trend that we decided to talk about was the convergence of unified communications and contact center, or I think it's even more specific. I think we could say the convergence of UCaaS and CCaaS. What are your thoughts, Zias?
Yeah, this isn't a new topic per se. We've been talking about this for quite some time, but there's actually companies that have done it now. And what's interesting is there really aren't that many, though, for all the chatter in the industry. Zoom rolled out their contact center, WebEx rolled out their contact center, 8x8 finally looks like theirs is ready to go, but a lot of companies are still partnering through it. So, and arguably the companies that partner, Ring and Five9 are the most successful ones. So for, again, for all the chatter in the industry of how important it is, the most successful companies have been the ones that have partnered versus built. And, I guess over the back half of the year, it'll be interesting to see if building it and actually having it fully integrated does make a difference. In theory, we can give you all kinds of reasons why, right? Better communications, workflows, things like that. But for the most part, customers have really used it as a way to make purchasing more efficient. And, even with some of the partnerships you can do, dial integration. But I'm curious to see, though, that, who's the first vendor that'll actually make the fully integrated solution matter more than the partner model.
You said it's not a new trend, but this goes back to the PBX days, right? The PBX, it used to be the default provider for the contact center was your PBX provider. So that kind of made sense because they were already in. They had the server, they had the circuits, they had the carrier relationship. So that all kind of made sense. The CCaaS, what we call CCaaS today, kind of broke out with pure plays, and so it kind of became their own category. And now we're seeing that pull back. It's interesting, some of the alliances that are being formed, because you've got companies like NICE, which is a pure play, and if people want the combo play, they've got that partnership with Ring Central that works pretty well. You've got companies like Zoom, you mentioned Zoom getting into contact center. Microsoft possibly getting into contact center. It's hard to say. They've announced it for Dynamics only. That's kind of what Microsoft does. They dip their toes. So that'll be an interesting play to watch. I think what really matters here, the converged play versus the pure play, is who the buyer is. I think if IT is the buyer, it's always going to be the converged play. They're going to want less vendors, less management, less integration. Agents are employees too. So IT is always going to favor the combo play. But if you have the buyer as a fairly powerful contact center group, they're going to want to go contact center shopping. They're going to want to find the contact center that meets their needs best, and that's going to be a separate play. So, but we're really seeing tremendous momentum in the CCaaS space with the UCaaS combination. So that's the first trend. Unless you want to add something else, we'll go to number 2. Yes.
No. Just, very rarely is the contact center the buyer for both of them. That'll be interesting to see if that changes. But the second trend, we'll stay with contact center, is the infusion of AI into contact center. And again, this is a trend we've talked about for a while. And I think a lot of the use cases early on, Dave, were about making the contact center more efficient, better call routing, things like that. But now what we're starting to see is the vendors actually using AI to do things you couldn't do before. And, Dialpad, and it was also, who was the other one? AWS rolled out, CSAT AI, right?
Oh no, it was intermediate.
Intermediate, right. Sorry, yeah, intermediate and Dialpad, where they're able to now infer CSAT from calls, which is something, I don't care how good your data analytics people are, you couldn't do that manually. And so
because they're doing it on 100% of the calls. I mean, that's just something. Yeah.
And so I think we've reached kind of this tipping point for AI and contact center where we're moving out of the era of making the contact center more efficient, but actually bringing more capabilities into it and doing things that you couldn't do before. And that's pretty exciting for the industry. And I do expect to see that shift create another step function in growth for the contact center. So I think, for all the interest there's been in AI, we've really just scratched the surface of what's possible.
Yeah, it really is. We've gone through different phases in contact center, or even in communications in general. Went from speeds and feeds, big iron, processor capability, number of ports, to pure software, what kind of scalability, whether it's virtualized or not. And now every aspect of the contact center is being the innovation is around AI. And that's chatbots, it's self-service, it's agent assist, it's sentiment analysis, it's quality metrics, it's scheduling now. Amazon just put up the scheduling thing. It's IVAs. It's all AI. I was at CCW recently, and you walk into any booth on that floor, and it was a very busy and active conference. You walk into any booth on that floor, it didn't take more than 30 to 40 seconds tops until you're in some sort of AI conversation. And it's tricky for the buyers because they're hearing the same thing from all the vendors. Oh, we have the best AI, we have the best, you could use it for better customer service, better for automation, lower your costs. And I think there's a pretty big discrepancy between what the vendors are saying, which I just said, automation, low cost, better satisfaction, and what the customers are saying. And what the customers are saying are operator, representative, operator, and there's a lot of frustration with that AI still. So there's a big gap still between what the vendors are promising and what the customers are realizing. I'm finding it interesting too, the way we're looking at AI as a service. We've talked about the conversational AI platforms before, like Cognigy. We've talked about, I just wrote about in the last newsletter, the Chime SDK from Amazon is now getting a lot of traction with, they say, getting a lot of traction with Cisco and Genesys customers. And so you've got a traditional contact center that may be working for you, and now you can just subscribe to AI as a service from another vendor. You get that from Google as well, of course. Something else I saw interesting and this is really kind of, I can't decide where my position on this. I saw this at CCW, a company called Sansa. It's AI that changes the agent's accent. And so, Zeus, you could have a British accent with this technology. It doesn't change your voice. It doesn't do anything else, but you just talk the way you normally speak, and the other person hears a British accent or other kind of accent. And the opportunity for this is something like an offshore contact center that is trying to find, it's hard not to find English-speaking agents, but English-speaking that sound American or sound British. And so now they could take, if you speak English, we can make you sound American or sound British. It's kind of strange. I'm not sure where I sit on this one, but I mean, it just drives the point. I mean,
you see that done in the U.S. sometimes with regionalization of, the South, North, things like that, Midwest. There is a need for it, right? So, especially with sensitive topics, people like the comfort of regionalization.
Point that AI is just changing every aspect of the contact center, every aspect, the real-time aspects, the reporting aspects, the agent at home aspect, every bit of it. And so, of course, there's lots of questions around implementation and how to make it work and all that stuff. And that's where the conversation is going to be for quite some time. Should we move on to number 3?
Sure.
All right. Number 3 is hardware is interesting again. Again, we go through different phases. There was a time where hardware was, poo-pooed completely. It's like, oh, no, we only do
especially
software.
Working home, right? Nobody was taking specialized hardware home, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but over the past few years, hardware has become very interesting again, and so to your point, work from home devices are becoming are getting traction.
Yeah.
Whole new set of devices. We've talked a lot, Zias and I, about video bars. There was the original, which I think was the Logi Meetup, but now there's a lot of really impressive video bars for room boards. Room boards, another category. Headsets are getting interesting with built-in noise cancellation. Noise cancellation technology itself is getting built into hardware. I don't know, Zias, have you seen that Logi Hub? That Logi Hub device? It's a speaker with USB ports on it, so it could be a good. I think it's a microphone too. Speaker, microphone, USB ports. Chromebooks I've been writing a lot about. The Facebook portal. I think hardware's gotten really interesting again. Part of it's USB-C.
It kind of. I think this is one of the things our industry does, right? We swing the pendulum one way, or the other, and everything's going to be done in software. And the reality is, you can't do everything in software. Sometimes it's best to do things in hardware. I think you look at, even like the WebEx devices, they do a lot of their AI, high intensity processing stuff on device because it's more efficient than trying to do it in software. So you can offload those capabilities. Some things are best done in the cloud, and I think it's this combination of hardware, software, cloud that actually makes an experience great. And if you look at it on the consumer side, Apple's mastered that, right? And that's why by and large they tend to have a great experience, where Android tends to be kind of all over the map. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. So I think it's mattered in the consumer space, and we're kind of swinging the pendulum back to the business side as well. But I expect to see the variety of different types of devices continue to grow for different use cases, and that's that certainly gives a little bit of an advantage to the vendors that make their own hardware.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Fourth topic.
Fourth topic, Dave. And I think it plays off the theme of hardware you just talked about, which is hybrid work. Hybrid work is has become kind of the overarching theme for almost everything. I am starting to talk to companies now where they are bringing people back to the office, albeit with a lot of resistance from employees. But there's a lot to that, right? And the communications and collaboration technology that people use play an important role in how hybrid work works. And I think a lot of the hardware that you brought up will be used to facilitate different experience in different places, right? So if I want to put a collaboration device in a lobby area, it better have noise cancellation and a lot of background noise removal, things like that built into it. Where if it's in an office, maybe it doesn't need it. I think a lot of the touch screens and stuff that we've covered, video bars, on top of TVs, all these things play an important part in hybrid work, and I think that it's good for our industry, Dave. I think if everybody stayed at home forever, then maybe you can do everything on your software client on your Chromebook or MacBook, but then you really get one kind of very boring experience. What the devices does is it allows us to experience hybrid work in different ways and actually allow us to work in any kind of environment with as many people as we want and still maintain that kind of personal relationship.
I find the hybrid work conversation fascinating. I think a lot of people are terrified of it, and rightfully so. The reasons to be uncomfortable with the unknown. And as you pointed out many times, yes, hybrid work is going to be much harder than work from home.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's a lot of variables out here. The basic problem is that a lot of employees like the work from home and don't want to go back. I believe that we're going to have and let's speed up, it's 5, 10, 15 years, I don't know, somewhere in the future. The future is going to be very distributed work from home. I believe that. In the near term, I believe hybrid work to be a necessary part of the transition. I think that it has to be embraced to some degree, although it's going to be difficult, but it has to be embraced. You can't tell everybody that they have to come back arbitrarily because they know that they were just as productive at home in many cases, and they don't. That feels like a penalty. And so we have to think about, and it's going to take some time to figure this out. have to think about what is best done in an office, what is best done at home, and we're going to have to evaluate that. You talked about how they have to evaluate the different spaces. It's going to be a learning curve. There's going to be some successes and failures. I don't like it when I hear these companies or like Mr. Musk saying everybody has to come back, non-negotiable period.
Yeah.
The governor of Virginia said that, and like 300 people resigned, the state employees. I don't think that's going to work because it's too arbitrary. I think it has to be looked at the roles and let managers decide, let employees decide, and figure this stuff out. And it's going to take some time.
Well, the question is, why do you go back to work, right? Like, I've described the future of work and hybrid work to be like college was, where you didn't go to class every day. You went there to meet with people. You went there to go to attend classes, and you kind of packed that day with things that you couldn't do on your own. Then when you had a lot of your individual work to do, you did that at home. And so I think from a business perspective, you need to think about why you're bringing. Don't bring people in just to have them sit at their desk and work, right? You can do that at home, but make sure you're doing large group meetings, team building exercises. You're doing company meetings, things like that. And so I think that's the hard part. I think companies haven't really figured out is why do you need to bring people back? How do you do it? And how do you do it in a way where people maximize the value of being there?
And one other point I want to make about hybrid work is that we tend to focus on location. Well, am I working at home? I'm working at the office. But a big, equally important part of hybrid work is when we work and what the workday looks like. Is it 8 to 5? Is it split up? Does it span multiple time zones with breaks in the middle? And I think that's just this whole concept of what we call asynchronous work, which is being facilitated through email and through messaging platforms, through recorded video, recorded meetings, etc. I think there's a nice, powerful element to hybrid work that comes with that doesn't get enough attention, which is called asynchronous work. Okay, and then the fifth theme is, and I wouldn't call it a theme if it hadn't been for Enterprise Connect, but it's what I'm calling UC Mobility 3. I just wrote a research note on this, and the basic concept here is that at Enterprise Connect in last March, 3 keynotes, RingCentral, Microsoft, and Cisco, presented what I call UCaaS Mobility 3, which is a native mobile solution that the native smartphone, the native device, had a native UCaaS phone number and had native UCaaS features. So they've actually integrated at some level the UCaaS stack and the mobile service together. And I saw that at Enterprise Connect, and I thought that's kind of interesting. I think I'll write a research note about it and kind of put together and see how these vendors are doing it. I finished the report, and it was like an epiphany. Holy crap, this is going to change everything. And it was one of the few times where I've written a report where I had this epiphany that this is really fairly significant. So the implications are fairly significant, both for end users, for vendors, for channel partners. But basically, we have 2 vendors today. There were 3 keynotes, but 2 vendors today, RingCentral and Cisco, have made it generally available. It's actually not RingCentral. It's AT&T at hand with RingCentral. Have made it generally available. And all of a sudden, you could use one vendor, one provider for pretty much all your communications, from meetings to calling to mobility, and have it individualized. You get a cell phone, you get a desk phone, you get both. And I think this is pretty significant. I think it's not quite a trend yet, but like I said, it was in last March, 3 keynotes. So what are your thoughts, Zeus?
Well, there have been attempts to do this before, right? If you remember, extension to cellular and things like that, but none of them were very efficient. They all chewed up trunk lines, and
they were all OTT.
Yeah. So there's always been a big desire to that. I mean, you can kind of replicate that by running a mobile client on your phone, but then you got to run the mobile client on your phone. You still have a separate number and stuff. So this is the first time it's actually been easy, right? And that's typically when you see the tipping point of something, that hockey stick adoption take off, right? Where, again, there's been the appetite for it. There's been some solutions, but they've all been kind of complicated. In fact, I remember the very early ones, you had to remember to forward your phone and unforward your phone, and it was such a hassle that you just didn't do it. But this is the first one that workers can use without actually thinking about it. And that's the most important part.
Yeah, and they don't have to compromise because when you do the OTT, you have a compromised service. It's not the
Yeah.
quality of service is lower, and so now there's no more compromise to use your business
And
number
from a
on your cell
business
phone.
perspective, turning it off is really easy too, right? So,
Yes.
yeah,
And yes, and you don't have to install software on the phone either, which means that you can have employees using their own phones for this, as long as it supports 2 SIMs, and they don't have to worry about employer software on their personal phone. So this is fairly significant. Like I said, as I was kept on going into this deeper and deeper, I was like, holy cow! And so I'm going to call it a trend now, even though it's not. But 3 keynotes at one Enterprise Connect—that's a trend. So we're calling it a trend. So those are the 5. Recap those. That is UC and CC coming together as number 1. The impacts of AI in the contact center is number 2. Hardware is interesting again, number 3. Hybrid work, number 4. And UC mobility 3 is number 5. So I think, Zeus, any closing thoughts?
No, it was kind of interesting. First half of the year, we'll see. When we do a wrap-up trends of the year, how many of these remain trends. And so I imagine a couple will, but I'm sure we'll have a couple new ones.
We'll just repost the same video. Actually, I think it'll probably probably work. Well, with that, hopefully next week we'll get back to a news cadence. I can hear the telegraph machines kind of printing over there, so hopefully the news is picking up a little bit. But it's been a very quiet and hot summer.
Yeah.
All right. Well, back to the bike.
Okay. Well, we'll see you next week, week 30. No, week 29.
Week 29.
Yeah. All right.